one of the things I've always been jealous of, because this is not me, but you ever hear people that say, like, I get up at like 4:30 every morning and I journal and drink my coffee during quiet time and then I go for a run. Listen, I love that for y'all. I really do, but that's not me.
I just want to thank everyone for tuning into today's conversation. I am super excited to have my guest today. And we know each other from a career path standpoint, but honestly, it's been such a beautiful thing to just watch her journey with balancing being a mom, a wife, someone that's really thriving as well and growing in her own career. So I just want to say thank you today, Stephanie, for being my guest and joining us in this conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the invite. I'm thrilled to be here.
Awesome. And if you don't mind taking a few moments just to share a little bit about yourself, and then we'll go ahead and just start having a real good, honest conversation about motherhood and career.
Sounds good. So, my name is Stephanie Anderson. I, first and foremost, am a wife and a mom of four children. So, there's never a dull moment around here. I reside in Richmond, Virginia. I'm actually born and raised there. So, I am partial to that. Our city is very rich in history and culture. And so, I couldn't imagine living anywhere else. And of course, it helps that I have an amazing village here, especially my family that is all very local too. I have been in my career mode for quite a bit now. I have been serving the property management rental housing industry for over 18 years now. For the past 4 years, I've been serving in more of a marketer role on the prop tech side, the supplier side of the industry, and focused on marketing, PR, communications, and social media. So I have taken quite a journey over the years, trying to really find that sweet spot. And I love that you have acknowledged that I'm thriving because most days I feel like I'm merely surviving, which I'm sure many people listening today can relate to that as well. But thrilled to be here.
Well, the thing is like, as people can see, like, I'm not in my own, I do not have my own children. I come and babysit my three little cousins. Um, and even though I don't have my own children, one of the things that I've realized with babysitting them is that you really have to approach it day by day, because some days you feel like, oh, I'm on top of it. They got out the house. And then some days you're like, everything's falling apart. Like, you want to be in the corner, like hiding. And it can sometimes become a challenge with showing up in the way that you truly want to show up. And so you mentioned you have four kids. Can you share the ages with us, please?
Sure. So my children have a varying age range. I have a 14-year-old who is almost 15. He'll actually be 15 next month. But for now, I have 14, 13, 7, and 2.
Wow.
Yes. So I'm going through all the emotions over here. We're
Yeah.
still in the toddler phase where, you can't leave them alone. We're having meltdowns every day, putting everything in their mouth, all the way up through dating and sports and
Mhm.
teenage hormones. So we have a wide variety happening.
I can only imagine, because especially with teenagers, like, you sometimes probably are in the moments where, and some of my friends, even though I don't have kids, will send each other um like funny stories or reels about parenthood and what it's like with toddlers and things like that. And one of my friends sent me this voice note. She's like, I had to ask my mom, was I like this? Like, do you ever think to yourself, like, like, where did I get this from? Like, was this me? Do you ever feel that way?
Absolutely. All the time. I actually don't think though where they got it from. Immediately my husband and I play the point the finger game because depending on what the kids have done or what they've said, we can immediately pinpoint who it came from. Whether it's his side of the family, my side of the family, me or him, it is constant, and it's really insane when you think about it how much they are like you. So sometimes we will correct the children for something that they've done, and we use a lot of teaching moments in our house in terms of explaining why it makes sense to not do it that way and think about it in the future. And I'll have to pull my husband aside sometimes and I'm like, you do know that you just called them out on something that you do constantly. And he's like, no, I don't. No, I don't. And I'm like, "But you do." But, it really you don't really notice that you're doing a lot of things because we just go through the motions, but they really do see and, years and years of watching parents do things, it's that subliminal messaging, they're picking up on it. And then when we see someone else do it, we're like, "No, we don't do that." It's a lot of being able to look, inner and see that what they're doing actually came directly from you.
And knowing that, does that impact how you show up in your career? Because I was talking to a family member last night, and I was saying to them, like, you can say a lot as a parent, but what happens is that the kids are paying attention to what you're doing. Are you present to what you're doing in your career and how they receive it?
I think so because it's really hard to separate or turn those switches off. I think that being authentic first and foremost is being the same all the time. So people are getting to see that side of you no matter what. But yes, I think that when you show up for people and you're being an example for them, so I think it's hard not to, to be that consistent person that you were there, and that I think also makes a really good leader because if you're showing up for your family constantly and you're trying to be a good role model and make good decisions, no one's perfect. Trust me, we all have flaws, but I do think that that translates into your career very seamlessly.
And knowing that from the age range, like, and then we have the 2-year old. Like, how do you decide? Like, was it that you decided? Because I mean, we're all adults. We know how babies happen. However,
I'm still learning over here.
so, like, was there a conscious decision to also have one later and, like, quote on later in life? I hate these terms, but essentially that's what it is.
Yes and no. So I'll give you kind of the messy middle of that answer. We always knew we wanted multiple children. My husband and I, we both have just one sibling each. So we came from families of two. And, our children were back to back. They're only 18 months apart, our oldest two. So most people would call them twins. They look identical. The biggest difference you see in them right now is the height difference. My almost 15-year-old has really, skyrocketed with his height. He's way taller than me now, and my daughter's the same height as me. And so there is a little bit of difference there. Otherwise, people do think that, they're twins because they act and look alike. With that being said, it got to be a couple of years after, they were growing up. I never had intentions of more at that point because it was really survival of the fittest. I remember my husband and I just feeling like two ships passing in the night because, two in diapers, two in bottles, two with binkies. I mean, it was tough. So major kudos to anyone who has multiple children under the age of 4 because it's not for the faint at heart. It's very difficult. And then a couple of years went by, and I thought to myself, I was kind of yearning for a baby. Now, I'm heard that from many women in my life or that I've talked to throughout the course of my life have said that's very common as we grow, to have that feeling because you're kind of yearning for what your kids were as they're getting older. And they said, so it's normal to have those feelings. However, if you can't shake those feelings over a period of time, in fact, it may be that you're feeling, it is legit and it's more than just wanting a baby. It's, to actually grow your family. And so I'm like, well, every time I close my eyes and I dream at night, I can see a family of 5, and we're currently a family of 4. And my husband and I agreed that we were going to have a third child. And, God said, Now's not the right time for you." And interestingly enough, we went through infertility issues, which we had never had with the first two. So that was a little bit shocking. And then when we finally did get pregnant and everything was going wonderful and we were announcing it everywhere and we were so excited. And then a while after that, we suffered a terrible loss. And so, losing a baby was, it was shameful. It was hurtful. It was devastating. It was all these feelings. And honestly, at that point, I'm like, I didn't even know anyone who had ever lost a baby. Well, That was also because no one talked about it, because the shame we feel as women that our bodies didn't do what we asked them to do or wanted to do. And I started opening up and talking to some people about it and finding out how many other women had experienced, similar stories of infertility and miscarriages and infant loss. And it was hard to talk about it, but it was also very meaningful for people to share those stories and know that you weren't alone. Well, after that point, my husband's like, you know what? I think that's God's way of saying that this is not meant for us. But I just still couldn't shake that feeling. And, we didn't want to try anymore after that because then it made us very, very nervous. But we decided, if this was God's plan, we really wanted to, grow our family, and we did. And so I call her my blessing baby because she's 7 now, but she was just, gosh, I can't even put into words, how much I had prayed for her and God had sent her at such a wonderful time. And then our family was complete. Or so I thought. And so here I am in the prime of my life. I'm like in my later 30s. My career's going great. My, family is thriving. We were really getting into that groove, right? Because it's hard whenever you're adding a child to a family or even a dog to the family, right? It kind of upsets the apple cart in a lot of ways. So we were doing so many wonderful things. And then I got pregnant. And, it was definitely unexpected. I was in perimenopause. So I didn't even think that that was something that could happen. So note to self, it can always happen. You never know. So my husband and I were so shocked. And this was also at the height of COVID. So when we found out we were pregnant, COVID was happening. My husband and I both had COVID. And so when I took a pregnancy test, he's like, "You have COVID, honey. I'm sure that skewed your results." I'm like, "No, no." So he refused to believe it for months after that. I mean, he would see ultrasounds and he's like in denial, like, "No, this cannot happen." And 9 months later, there he was. And so we are officially factory closed. We are a done deal here. But yeah, now I am in the world of being over 40 and having a young child that I did not anticipate having. And it's definitely been glorious and challenging all wrapped up into one.
But I would even think, because one of the nights when I first started, because this is like my fifth month doing it, and the first month I did it, something you said about being in the weeds of it. Like I remember one day after getting everyone to sleep, because the ages are almost about to be 10, 7, and about to be 3. And I remember like laying in the bed, and I was like, I can see why, if a unit isn't like locked in, that having children, like they don't make it after the 2 years. And like, because I can't imagine doing all of this by myself and then not having a partner that's helping. I know myself, I would be resentful. Like
Mhm.
I knew that it's a challenge and a journey, but then I was like, it made sense as to how sometimes when we're parents, or especially I would say moms, you can get lost in just, for lack of better wording, the survival of it all and trying to still do your best, take care of everything, and sometimes taking care of others more than sometimes we'll take care of ourselves. And then find ourselves in this position that, um, we can look back and again acknowledge ourselves, but I thought to myself, like, I can't imagine what this would have been like at 20. Like, I'm sure that how motherhood was when you had your first two probably feels a lot different. You probably are a little bit more wiser too
Yes.
on behaviors now than when you first had your first two. Would you say that that's the case?
100%. I would say there's pros and cons to both for
Mhm,
sure.
mhm.
The first one that always comes to my mind is after wisdom is patience.
Yeah.
I am way more tired now because,
Yes.
in your 20s, you're like, I can party all night and go to bed at 3 a.m. and wake up and go to work at 6 a.m.
Yeah.
It's a different mode. So I think that, I'm a lot more tired, but my level of patience is definitely a lot bigger than it was back then. My one of my nieces, so I am having, I'm going to be a great aunt
Oh.
for the first time in March, and so one of my nieces, I have six of them, and one of them is pregnant, and
Mm,
she's 21 years old, and so
mm,
constantly I'm like. 21, oh my gosh, you know what I was doing at 21, like in my mind. But I think it's just it's different times. It's
mhm,
different, people are doing different things. One of the statistics that I had read back when I was pregnant with my fourth, because I felt like I was the only one in the world, right, that would
mhm.
be over 40 with a baby.
Yeah.
And 20% of women in the US are actually having babies after 40
Yes.
intentionally,
Yeah.
because they want to build their career, they
Yeah.
want to get more stability. Financial hardship is a big deal right now
Yeah.
for everyone, and trying to find that sweet spot and planning. And I think so much in our minds now, we want to plan that perfect moment, and so
Yes.
we're waiting and waiting and waiting, and then we kind of have that realization of, oh wow, is it too late? And then
Yeah.
you go to things like TikTok and you see 60-year-old women having
Mhm.
children. And
Yeah.
so it's definitely fair game, I guess, for any age range.
Yeah. And I think too, it's because before a lot of people really didn't talk about it. I would say maybe about 2 years, 3 years ago. Well, yeah, 3 years ago, I had about five different friends that were facing infertility, and they either were miscarrying. Like I had some friends that had multiple miscarriages, some that had to do IVF. I all the whole gamut, and I would try to talk to them, encourage them, because again, like you said, it's like the shame, and then people think that no one else is going through it. And here I am, the friend, and I know multiple people that are going through, and I'm like, no, and it's okay. Like I know it's hard, and all of them now have kids, so I would share with them, like when someone else, I'm like. You never know. Like, don't feel like it's never going to happen. And all of them, their children are either now 2 years old, one is about to turn one, but we don't have a lot of people talking about it. So when things happen, it's something that, because even with crib deaths and things like that, I
Yes.
even had a friend that experienced that. So it is hard, but I think because of the shame, the hurt, the grief that a parent or a household feels, um, that keeps them quiet, but then also it robs us from having the community around us that can like truly empathize, to be able to help support us to get through that. And it's just not a lot of conversation around it.
It's really not. And, I look internally to myself as I experienced it, wondering how could I make a difference, knowing what I felt and moving forward. And I think it's really comes down to each individual, but also
Mhm.
creating that safe space for people to talk about it. I remember feeling so much shame that and so much grief, I actually didn't want to talk to anyone about it. My
Mhm.
husband was processing his own feelings about it. And of course, he couldn't possibly know. I mean, yes, he's suffering the loss in the sense of that was his child and it's gone, but we're suffering physically too as well as
Mhm.
mentally,
Yeah.
and that's really difficult. But I remember telling my husband, whomever knows about this, tell them not to ask me about it.
Yeah.
And that's weird because to know me is to know that I am such an open book about things. But I remember for months after it happened, I didn't want to talk about it because I knew
Mm.
I would cry. I didn't want
Mm.
anybody to ask me about it. I didn't want people grieving for that. I almost wanted to save them from any pain, that
Oh,
I would
yeah.
hoard all that pain, I would hoard all of that emotion and just let everybody else move on with life. Let's just go back to whatever was normal
Mm.
before.
Yeah.
And that is like everything wrong to do. That is why
Yeah.
we are at higher rates for depression and
Yeah.
anxiety and mental health crisis, because we're holding all of that in. But
Mhm.
I 100% was a prime example of how easy that happens.
And I appreciate you sharing that, because I know that there's definitely going to be some listeners that have experienced some level of it. And the inclination to handle grief that way isn't even for just only resonated with our children. This is for grief of all forms and fashions. I've had conversations with some people, because the thing about also being in this age bracket, I tease people and I say, like, I feel like I'm at the age where I'm the designated driver, but not in the fun way. Like, now everyone is more older and is, oh, it's getting dark. Jesse, can you drive? So we're getting
Yes.
to this era now where, we're going to probably be experiencing loss of family members, people that really matter to us. And sometimes I've had someone ask that was just like, how long did it take for you to get over? I was like, okay, when you ask that, that automatically tells me you're not even addressing it. You're thinking it's just something you can step over. And like, you're gonna have moments where you're completely okay, and there are gonna be moments not. But the thing is that if there's always this um feeling about behind it, then you're really not ever allowing yourself to accept that it happened or to
Right.
even get beyond that specific moment.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think it's hard. I think we have to have that safe space of people to talk to. And
Hmm.
I also think it's okay to talk to a doctor or talk to a
Yeah.
therapist, talk to someone else that can help you. I experienced postpartum depression with my third, and I do attribute a lot of that to happening after suffering a loss of a child. So I think that that came with it, but I didn't know the signs to look for. I didn't know what was normal, what was not normal. And I go back to the time when I was in college and one of my sorority sisters had had a baby. And I remember specifically her saying that she wanted to put her baby in the microwave. And I remember at that point, being young and in college, everybody's just like, oh, that's weird. Like, is she joking? Is she not joking? But that was clearly a sign of postpartum depression. And thank God she never did anything to the baby. But it's one of those moments where you realize that we have to help each other. When you talk about taking what's happening in your personal life and making it applicable to your workspace, when I think about me as a leader, I think about the people that I've led, all throughout my career and helping them to understand what to look for in others. Women's leadership conferences, we see those a lot. And one of the questions that I get asked is, well, do men go to those? And can men? Now, there are some, I think NMHC's most recent one they didn't want any men there. It was like specific to being, you had to identify as a woman to attend. But I think, the reason I like it open to everyone is one, it allows anybody, no matter how they identify, to come and feel as inclusive in that space. But two is that if you are a different gender in the workspace, you need to know about what's happening so that you can understand how to help others and how to lead them and how to make an impact in that space. And you can't know if people don't talk about those things. One of the things I posted on LinkedIn recently that drew a lot of conversation was about having policies in place for menopause. Menopause is really a big deal. And when we think about working class women in that age bracket and what they're suffering from at home and in their personal lives, and then expected to show up to work like everything's perfect and fine and that you're 110% is not okay. And a lot of that still comes from who's leading all of these companies. It is men leading these companies and it is men running the workspace. And no one has educated them on these, which is why we don't have policies in place. And, it's such a need for it. So I just love that we're having conversations like this because that's really what helps to start that wheel of change.
Yeah, because I think that it allows for you to step into someone else's world. Like,
Yes.
that's the goal to empathy. Like, with empathy, that doesn't mean that you always take on someone's viewpoints. It doesn't
Right.
mean that you even always agree, but I think it's being able to put yourself in someone else's shoes. Like, there's always going to be multiple sides to a conversation, but most importantly, there's always more than one side of a conversation. And I think that if women sometimes are either, I feel like when we go into a workforce, and we can even kind of start shifting the conversation to that, is that we're almost expected to have like this superwoman kind of,
Yes.
like, oh, I can take care of my kids, don't do all, and like all of this stuff. And I don't feel like there's that expectation of our male counterparts. Um, and I would love to know, like, with you, when it comes to balancing all the things that are important to you, How do you even try to prioritize that, or how do you even manage that?
It's hard. It really is tough, and especially when you're career driven. So I think for me, it's been a hard way to balance when I know that I could do so much more and I want to have this thriving career, but I also know that being a mom is just what my dream was. It was something that I always wanted to do, and I know that I am responsible for creating these children and then turning them into fully functioning adults that make an impact in society. So when you think about it in that way, that's a heavy lift in and of itself. You know, when you think about balance, though, you have to think of it as a push and pull. You're trading this for that. So, one of the most instrumental parts of prioritizing for me these past few years is coming to terms with the fact that I can't do everything. I give my village so much credit. My family just helps tremendously with our children. My husband, my husband is my rock star. We are 50-50. I depend on him. It's not always that I stay at home with the sick children or that I, do. Now, there are things that I definitely take charge of because I want to do. I will fight him for bath time, right? And book time, because those are things that are really, it's that bonding time with my kids that I don't want to give up. And he's like, yeah, great. But you know what? He also cooks all the meals. And he also, there's those things that he does that I would not be as successful in my career or as great of a mother if I didn't have that. Sure, I could try those things, but it's really important. So when you think about those that have barriers, that don't have a spouse or a village or something to that extent, I give those people a lot of credit. I was actually raised by a single mom, my sister and I, and so I've been there, I've seen it, I know what that struggle is, and I commend them so much because it is difficult. Now, God forbid something happened and I became a single parent tomorrow, oh, I'm still going to do it. Like, I'm going to do it and I'm going to give it my best. But one of the things that I've had to learn when we just talked about prioritization is letting go of things. And FOMO is real. And this year, going into 2025, I made a commitment to myself that my travel schedule was going to be cut in half to what it was traditionally. And that's hard because then I have to go to my job and say, okay, I'm not going to travel as much. And then I feel like I'm letting people down. And I love being around people and learning and speaking and sharing and all the great things. But for me, this is a period of quiet. It is a period of being still. It is a period of focusing on my family while still giving everything I can to my job, but just in a little bit different way. And it's different. And I want people who are listening to know that when you are experiencing those changes in life, let yourself grieve that difference, because like for me it's hard where people are getting excited about all these events they're attending and I'm not going to those events. So how am I still going to make an impact? I have to rethink about that. But being intentional with your time and focusing on what truly matters, whatever that is for you, is really key.
And I'm glad that you touched on to that. I mean, because that's essentially why I'm even here, is because my aunt has aspirations in her career. She's doing amazing things in the field that she does, but everyone's not going to jump at helping with three kids and then also finding resources to help with three kids. It's a challenge. And my uncle, he works abroad, so like there's you do need that village, and it's necessary. And one of the things I had to be present to is like in this season, I'm grateful to have the flexibility to come and be able to be a part of my cousins lives as well, to be able to support this household unit. But even before this, I was thinking about becoming a foster parent, and one of the things that hit me while in this season, it was like it will require a lot. Um, and if I'm making a conscious decision to do it, I don't know if I would do that single. And I had to be okay with that choice. Like I have a partner, but his kids are daughter just turned 21, the other one's 18. You're not talking someone
Yeah.
into you're not talking someone into like they're over the hill at this point, you know?
Yeah.
But I was like maybe down the road, making into a foster home, like doing that, I probably could have that conversation with them. But again, until we even cross the road of marriage and all that other stuff, if that's the direction we go, again, it's making a conscious decision with that. And I think sometimes for women, if we're having children or not, it's being present to the shifts and the seasons that are going on, and allowing for yourself, like you said, to mourn however things have changed, or even just see the opportunity of what could be there with that shift. And I think that we've experienced it individually. We also experience it with our families. We've experienced shifts within relationships and then with intimate relationships as well. And all of these things are going on at the exact same
Yeah.
time. And it's just kind of allowing yourself to be present to what you're really up to. And once I turned around 39, I was like, what do I really want my 50s to be like?
Yeah.
And not from a depressing standpoint. It's like, I feel that once we cross a certain age, whatever age that is for any one of us, is where we start to really see, like, how do I want retirement to look? How do I really want to look in my family, or in how do I want to support my family? Like, there's a shift where I feel like in our 20s and 30s, like, we're still trying to figure things out. We're trying to figure ourselves out. And I feel like once we're over 40, we're more intentional with all the things that really matter to us, um, and allowing for us to stand into that place. Have you ever had that moment where you're like, I'm assuming you have, because of thinking about how you are going to attack travel. But have you had this moment in your life where you're like, okay, am I just living things, or am I being intentional with my time?
Yes, yes and no. Yes,
Okay.
I have thought about that. No, I have not made as much physical work there in that space that I would like to. And let me give you an
Okay.
example. When you're up all night with a toddler and
Yeah.
you're tired, you definitely are going through the motions.
Yeah.
I try to be a realist in a lot of ways, and so but I try not to let that doom and gloom,
Mm.
ruin moments for me.
Yeah.
But I do think about, if I'm lucky enough to be a grandparent and live that long life, because none of us are guaranteed tomorrow.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
do think about that and I do try to plan for the future. I saw something recently, I think it was Instagram, I was just scrolling and it was talking about, once you hit 40, you're over 50% done with your life. I want to say they said it was like 62% done with your life based on lifespans and all the different things. And I was like, wow. When you start putting it into that perspective, you really start thinking about planning. Where are you going with the rest of your life? What do you still want to do? If you knew you only had this limited amount of time left on earth, what do you have left that you want to do? And so, if you don't take anything else from this podcast, think about taking care of your body, yourself, and take the trip, eat the dessert, buy the shoes, do all the things that you're hesitant to do because we just don't know what the future is going to bring. Last year was a tough year for our family for a couple of different ways. Obviously, my son had a horrible injury and there were a lot of things that just kind of shifted in our lives. But with me personally, I found that hitting 40 was tough for me physically. I was diagnosed as a diabetic. I also was diagnosed with endometriosis. I had all of these things come up, and it was just at a routine appointment. Thank goodness for my OBGYN, but I had all these things that came up and I knew I had to start making changes that were really, really important. And, that day at my appointment, I went into an ultrasound, then went into surgery. I had all these things happen kind of all at once. And then here we are now. That was in June. And here we are now, almost 7 months later. I have had to lose weight. I've lost 48 pounds. And I don't feel out of breath when I walk up the stairs anymore in my own house. There's things like that, but it was hard. I let myself go because I needed to make sure my kids were where they needed to be. And I still suffer here. I'm still, There's days where I'm like, "I wish I could go get a massage or get my nails done or do this or do that," and I don't because I prioritize other things, making sure I'm present for my kids and then work and what the load that we carry, but I will say that that is an intentional focus. That's that mind shift that I've really changed since turning 40 is that you get one body. And I don't wanna be sitting here I mean, I do wanna be sitting here 20 years from now, right, God willing, but I don't wanna be here 20 years from now and unable to bend over and tie my shoes or to feed myself or to do the basics that I think we all take for granted because it's easy to when we're going through the motions and then realize that I should have, could have, would have, right? Like I should have worn more sunscreen back in the day, anybody knows, right? That we're trying to fight wrinkles and all the things, but these are lessons you learn with experience that I try to tell like my 13-year-old girl right now, with taking care of her skin and do all these things. It's in one ear and out the other because you're 13, but it does make a difference. And when you get to that shift and where I see myself 20 years from now, I want to be healthy. Right. That's the goal. And whatever that looks like, that doesn't mean skinny. That doesn't mean, I want to feel like I can run after grandkids and that I can show up for people and myself every day as healthy as I can be.
Because it's funny because I don't remember what photo you posted, but you
Ain't
had
no
posted
telling,
this.
girl. Ain't no telling.
It was a photo you posted, and I was like, "Oh, I see you, Stephanie." I was like, but it's one of those things that you don't. It's like because I know everyone is on their own health journey. So then when you have mentioned that I was like, because I saw like how you were showing up too, changing a little bit. So I was like, okay, like you're embracing this, and I get to like because you have a 2 year old. I was like sometimes I noticed that sometimes parents like moms have to like regroup towards what they were doing prior to a kid. So I just assume like, oh, okay, she's back in her flow and her rhythm. But when I saw you post a photo, and I was like, I can't remember. It wasn't when you announced it, but you were somewhere, and I saw the photo, and I was like, Stephanie looks so cute, and it's but sometimes though I share that is because someone may only see the outward
Yeah.
but not know what's going on inwardly and why those changes occur. And that's why I don't ever say anything because you never know what's going on with
You
someone in
don't.
general, especially when it
Yeah.
comes to health or internally. But to hear that again, I think that's something for especially for us over 40 is to really be present to the things that we can do so that we can have a longer and fuller life. And I applaud you for doing that.
Thank you. I think sometimes we have no choice.
Yeah.
We get to a point in our life where I should have made changes years ago.
Yeah.
I don't want to say I got lazy, but essentially I did in terms of taking care of me
Mhm.
because I prioritized everything else over
Yeah.
me. And it just it wasn't the best. And so,
Yeah.
focusing on that, those shifts, right, of being intentional and where we're being intentional at, it's hard because you want to do it all and you can't.
Yeah.
And so I know that this is this year of more silent for me in terms of being still and focusing on our family
Mhm.
and, just getting stronger together.
Yeah.
And then next year it might be loud and proud, right? I might
Yeah.
be traveling the whole world. Who knows where the next is going to take you? But I
Yeah.
think the best advice I can always give to others is just, look inwards, talk to people you trust and know, and then
Yeah.
make decisions based on where you want to see yourself or where you want to go, even when it's hard. Because
Yeah.
again, you're making decisions. I remember making a decision years ago to work remotely, which, if you know me at my core, my personality is to be in an office setting around other people and leading a
Yeah.
team and all of those things. And I remember saying, okay, I'm going to take a career step down. And people are like, well, is it really a step down? Yeah, it was in a lot of ways. But for me, it was I need to be remote because I need to get my kids off the bus every single day. That
Yeah.
was a non negotiable for me.
Yeah.
Another non negotiable is I won't relocate. I have a couple of girlfriends that always say, are you CEO of the company yet, of any company? Because that's you, girl. You should. And I'm like, no, because that's not the season that I'm in. And
Yeah.
relocation, I won't. It's not
Yeah.
even I don't want to, it's I won't.
Yeah.
And when you come up with those non-negotiables and you stay true to those, it
Yeah.
really will help you with your prioritization even more.
I love that you said that because that's also was going to lead into my next question. But I think it's good to have that, regardless of. I think for any person, you need to have those non-negotiables because sometimes we can find ourselves on this path and then we wake up and we're somewhere we never wanted to be. And I feel that it's so easy, especially now with social media, because we see all of these glimpses of like life. And like a little funny story. And I did a TikTok on. I was like, how are these parents doing this? Like, oh, my child is perfect videos. And I'm like, I'm watching them. I was like, yeah, I can post a cute photo of them, but you don't know. I was just like yelling at them to take that photo. But the
Yep.
thing is I share that only because sometimes we see these glimpses of everything being perfect.
Yeah.
And then when we think that we're going towards this, and then we get there and we're not happy. So I'm glad you shared about having those non negotiables and being clear about it because I'm sure that more people than not are finding themselves at a destination that they never intended to be at. And it's too late. Not too late. I mean, depending on like life or in their situations and how much they want to change. But the question I did have for you, like, do you have any routines or strategies that have helped you stay organized and staying amongst four children and the chaos and motherhood, being a wife and career?
Okay, so I'm going to give it to you straight.
Okay.
One of the things I've always been jealous of, because this is not me, but you ever hear people that say, like, I get up at like 4:30 every morning and I journal and drink my coffee during quiet time, and then I go
Yeah.
for a run. Listen, I love that for y'all. I really do. But that's not me. And
Yeah.
I just, everybody's like, but you could make yourself. I don't want to.
Mm-mm.
I don't want to because I actually like to sleep and I am a
Yeah.
little bit more of a night owl. So, like, when I get the kids
Ah,
to bed at night and my husband goes to bed and everything, I actually will either binge some Netflix, like,
yeah,
whatever show I'm into. I
yeah,
will do some work. I will read a book. Like, that's kind of like my time. And yeah, does
yeah,
it make me a little tired the next day? Yeah. Cause again, we're balancing, right? We're trading this for that. But
yeah,
I don't want to give that up. And so for me, a 4 a.m. wake up call, we're already up by 6:30 in my house between 6 and 6:30 every morning. So, and
yeah,
that's straight to getting kids ready, right? We
yeah,
gotta get breakfast and dressed and all the things. So that's definitely not me.
yeah,
I think for organization, a lifesaver for us in our house is just Google calendars. You
mm,
know, just having everything exactly where it should be. I joke with my husband all the time, if it is not on the calendar, it does
it
not
doesn't
exist,
exist.
because we have 3 out of our 4 children are involved in competitive sports. And
Oh,
so we're constantly on travel teams and
mm,
competitions, and we have to divide and conquer a lot, my husband and I, because we can't all be in the same place at the
yeah,
same time.
yeah,
Because the one thing is, I never want my kids to look up in the stands and not see someone, whether that's Nana and Papa, Grandma, Mom, Dad. They
yeah,
have to have somebody that they see there because that's important and that makes an impact on your child for their later years.
yes,
So I want them to always feel supported in that. But that takes a lot of coordination and
yeah,
planning and making sure that everyone is taken care of. So again, the Google Calendar is a lifesaver. My husband years ago gave me as a Christmas present. I don't want to say it out loud because it'll pick up, but Alexa,
yeah,
right? In our house. Well, there's one, and I forgot what it's called, but it's one of the Echoes, but it's literally like it's like a picture frame size, and it goes
yeah,
on the wall, and that is our life. Even my mom, when she's here keeping my 2-year-old during the day, she can go to the calendar and see exactly what's happening,
mm,
all the moving pieces of where everybody is. And
yeah,
that has been instrumental. Technology is such a beautiful thing when it works. And that
yes,
has just been a lifesaver because everybody has visibility into it. That helps with us and our children and our life, and it's made a big deal. So to me, that is just essential. The other thing I would say that we've done that helps us is, when we talk about prioritization and then planning and being intentional, one of the hardest things for me that I did about 3 months ago
okay,
was admit that I needed help.
mm,
And that was, I couldn't keep up with the house cleaning.
yeah,
Now, I could keep things straight and tidy, and I love making sure we're picking up the kids' toys. And I have my happy spots in the house, which are like
yeah,
they're always kept really nice. But in terms of like cleanliness, germs out, making sure everything is just done,
yeah,
we had to bring somebody in, and
Yeah.
she has now become a part of our family, our housekeeper, and she
Yeah.
comes every other Friday, and it is just incredible, because she helps us thrive in our household. You know, the
Yeah.
excitement of the kids coming home once she's been there all day. She knows the little nuances of like setting their stuffed animals up in certain ways and doing
Yeah.
certain things that like make bring joy to my children. And
Yeah.
she's just such a blessing for us. And so normally, if you would have asked me 5 years ago if I would have ever did something like that, it would have been no. It would have been like we can't spend that money. It's
Mm.
we can't. It's almost like that shame we talked about. Like
Yeah.
I'm a woman, that makes me feel inadequate to not
Yeah.
be able to take care of my house and home. But
Yeah.
let me just tell you that looking internally at those types of things and having those uncomfortable conversations with what can I change that's going to make everything better, that's it. That's 4 hours she comes every 2 weeks that I can actually
Mhm.
not have on my plate. It's not my burden to carry, and it's worth it.
And honestly, I was listening to maybe to a podcast or read a book or something like that, and I remember someone actually saying this, that they got clear on the fact that it's more important for them to get that 4 hours than to take away from their family in doing those things, or creating additional aggravation or breakdowns, or now we're arguing more of our partner, or lashing out at the kids and all of those different things because we're taking on this burden. But
Yes.
that's where, when I mentioned about this, we're supposed to be superhuman, and it's like, no, I don't choose that. Like, as I tell people, like, even though I'm technically am single, I don't want to do all things.
Right. Nor should you have to.
Yeah, exactly. Nor do I. It's like, why? Like, it shouldn't have to be that way because our time is so valuable. And
Yes.
even if it's getting del grocery delivery services, or I know some people, like my mom, single mom, she used to get our clothes washed. And when I lived in DC growing up, there was a laundromat that was close by, and they offer folded laundry.
Yeah.
It made sense for us because who was going to, like, she was actually an educator, so she was a teacher, special needs teacher, and then she also had a daycare center, so she ran a business, but she had people that ran it for her, but she's still, the owner and
Yeah.
involved in it. So if we only have one day to be together on a Saturday, why are we going to spend that whole day doing laundry?
Exactly.
Just drop it off. We can clean the house. I could clean, if our house
Yeah.
wasn't huge, you can get that done in 2 hours. But if we had to do the laundry at the home, that's a whole day where we can actually go out, do something fun together, instead of just doing that. And I think that we have to sometimes take inventory of our time
Yes.
and how we want to spend it and who we're going to give our energy to in those moments. Because I applaud you for that, because I know that sometimes that can be the one of the heaviest lifts. I've even heard with people that have decided to get individuals to help with meal prep or cooking and things like
Yeah.
that. Um, but once they really embrace it, I've heard people say, like, we were either going out and spending a lot of money eating out because one of the parents didn't have the time to do all the cooking, and now they're able to eat more healthy meals and the household, and it was just a lot less stress for them, and just by doing that. So I think we always need to take heed. Yes, it might cost money, but it's also
Yeah.
costing us to not make that investment too.
It's true. You have to put a value on your time
Yeah.
with everything that you do. You know, I'll always remember Tony Blake saying, wise words to me many years ago is, I was thinking to myself, like, should I take this speaking opportunity? I'd have to take off work and I'd have to go here and do this. And I'll never remember her looking at me because I wanted somebody to tell me what that price looked like. And she would
Mm,
say, the way that you start is what is it going to take you to leave your house?
yeah.
What is it going to take you to kiss those sweet babies goodbye and go for however long, and on top of the work that you're going to be doing? And that was really impactful to hear that, because it made me think of my time more valuable than what I was, instead of
Yeah.
just, oh yeah, they'll pay for the airplane and they'll pay for the time it's going to take me to put together a presentation and this and that. But really, I was giving away so much more.
Yeah.
And, what does that look like? And maybe that company can't afford what my time that I have valued as for that
Yeah.
price was, and that's okay, because
Yeah.
that's when you can say no to business and be more intentional, because it really is about how we're spending our time. So really looking at your time, what your time costs, coming up
Mhm.
with, what that looks like for you, and then determining, well, yes, I'd have to spend, $200 to pay a cleaner,
Yeah.
but what's my time look like for 4 hours on a Saturday doing that, when I could be doing something like my kids' sports or
Yeah.
grocery shopping or taking a nap, because those are important things too, how we take care of ourselves in order to
Mhm.
show up for others. So I love that. Smart mom, your mom is.
Yeah, I remember every Saturday we'll drop everything off and put them in all big bags and pick it up. And it was just easy. And it was a lot better than me doing it at a teenage, because,
Yeah.
teenagers do the best. But I mean, you don't want, you really don't want to trust us to do it. So like, it's just one of those things. So I appreciate you giving all of this great information and tips. I would love to hear from you. Like, what's one last share that you would want to give to encourage other moms that are over 40 that are in the weeds of it all?
From someone who shows up on social media a lot and loves seeing others' stories and videos, because I think that there's a lot of information we can gain from the world of social media, I just want to remind you that joy can be taken from you so easily when we play
Mhm.
the comparison game. A
Yeah.
comparison to others really does steal our joy and causes us to grieve in ways we shouldn't have to. So
Mhm.
just remember that what you're seeing is merely a highlight reel of someone else's life.
Yeah.
And try not to think that you are less than because you're
Yeah.
seeing someone else do things.
Yeah.
If the homemade DIY crafts give you anxiety and stress and all the things, then don't do it. Because at the end
Yeah.
of the day, all your kids want is a happy parent. They want a happy parent that enjoys the things that they do. For someone like me, I love DIY. It actually is something fun that I can do and enjoy with my kids, and makes me feel like I'm doing something special for them. But
Yeah.
again, I don't fix their lunches with all the cute little things, right, that you see other parents do in the
Yeah.
cutting of the shapes and stuff. So find what works for you, even if that's just a hug and a kiss every single day. Whatever
Mm.
that is, I want you to hold on to that and be consistent with that, but just don't compare yourself to what you see on the internet, because it's not all real anyways, and
Yes.
it's just not fair. We can't do everything.
Awesome. I truly appreciate you just giving such insight and being so candid and sharing. And I definitely pray that a lot of the listeners can resonate. And I just really want for other moms to just, or just women over 40 to not feel like they're on this island, but we can really learn from each other. We can lean on each other and we can grow into the people we're really wanting to be and have a great second half of our life. Since they want to say it
Amen.
that way.
Yes, amen to that.
Awesome. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Jesse. I appreciate your time, and thanks everyone for listening.